Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. This is going to be an occasional series. I don't do a huge amount of modelling or painting on this channel, mainly because I'm not that good a modeller and I'm certainly not that good a painter. So there are other channels out there that can do that better than I do. But I've had a look around and there's a couple of channels who approach this topic from the other perspective. So they'll do a unit, whereas I'm doing it from what can I make out of this box of figures. And that's what we're going to look at today. We're going to look at what alternative units can I make from the Perry's Heavy Cavalry, Cuirassiers and Carabinier box. Now there's four main regiments I want to look at, one of which I haven't made because the necessary bits aren't available yet. I tried casting some of my own and they looked a bit terrible, to be honest. So I'll come to that at the end. But the first regiment that I made from this box, now I've just done a sprue of each here, plus the command as well. The first regiment I've made was the Spanish Cuirassiers. Now they were effectively exactly the same equipment-wise as French Cuirassiers, except they wore red coats with green facings. Now it's no surprise that they do look exactly the same as the French Cuirassiers, because they used captured French cuirassier equipment, which is quite surprising given that the French didn't actually use any cuirass-wearing cuirassiers in the peninsula. I should take this opportunity to point out as well that Spanish cuirassiers, I mean cuirassiers in the Spanish army. The 14th Cuirassiers, who were a regiment that were raised in France and sent to Spain, are also known as the Spanish Cuirassiers. So I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the Spanish Cuirassiers, the guys who fought for the Spanish army. Now, this entire series was inspired by the painting that you can see on the screen now, and that's a painting by one of the best military artists who's living today, in my opinion. That's Keith Rocco. I've used his paintings quite a lot in my videos. He's also very good for American Civil War, if you're interested in that period as well. But here we can see a patrol of just two Spanish Cuirassiers going down the road, and it was the first time I saw that painting, a light bulb came on in my brain, and I thought, well, these guys are just exactly the same as French Cuirassiers. All I've got to do is repaint them. So that's the easiest conversion that you're ever going to have. Just paint them a different colour. Now I'm just flicking through my copy of Albion Triumphant Volume 1, and I don't think there's rules in here for Spanish Cuirassiers. No, there isn't. But there are rules for Spanish Heavy Cavalry. They give them hand-to-hand 7, morale 4 plus stamina 3, and Heavy Cavalry D1, wavering, unreliable. So what I would do is I would take those stats, I would give them +1 to their morale, to give them a 3+ morale, on par with French Cuirassiers, or even Austrian or Russian Cuirassiers, and I'd give them Heavy Cavalry D3. I'd probably keep the wavering and unreliable, not because the Cuirassiers performed poorly. To be honest, I can't really find much about how they performed. I'm sure they fought the Battle of Vittoria. They're a bit later than sort of all the main battles, though. But just to keep that Spanish flavour, one thing that I don't want to have is just French Cuirassiers wearing red. That would be a bit boring for me. So by keeping that wavering and unreliable, that keeps that that soupçon of Spanish. Soupçon's French. I don't know. I'm sure there's a Spanish version of that word. And that just keeps them with that slight Spanish flavour that allows you to keep the army as a more coherent thing. Also, it's easier as well to not forget the rules, or remember that you've got rules that you don't have elsewhere, things like that. So I'd give them the trappings of a Cuirassier, but keep the Spanish rules. Now the second regiment that I've made are Westphalian Cuirassiers. Anyone who's been listening or following the Brunswick series will know that I was talking a lot about the Westphalians in the first episode there. Now I have to watch my language here. I may call them Württembergs. They're not Württembergs, they're Westphalians. So if in this section at any point I say Württemberg, that's a mistake. I'm supposed to be saying Westphalians. I've been confusing the two quite a lot in my head recently, so I just want to put that warning out there. Now you can see from the picture that I've put up on the screen now that there are two different regiments of Westphalian Cuirassiers, and they do look quite different to each other. So we're looking at the second regiment of Cuirassiers here. Don't worry, I will be doing another video on the first regiment of Cuirassiers as soon as I get round to it. And you can see that they are, again, very similar to the French Cuirassiers, with the dark blue coats, the red frills that poke out of the cuirass, and the main difference that you can see, though, is their helmets. Now, they've got the helmets that are... I'm going to use the ones from the Carabiniers that you get in the same box. So I can make this regiment out of just one box. I don't need any additional extras. I may come to that later. But as it stands, I can just make them out of this box. Now, the actual Westphalian 2nd Cuirassiers helmet is not exactly the same as this one. It's a little bit different. It's more like a Prussian Garde du Corps helmet, to be honest. But for our purposes, it's close enough. I think if someone were to come up to your table at like a wargaming show and they had a look over there, they'd be like, oh, those guys are the 2nd Cuirassiers from the Westphalians. So for my purposes, I think it's near enough. As you can see, I've done the command sprue here for the Westphalians as well. However, I have done the trumpeter a little bit wrong. So look back in a future episode, or maybe on a Wednesday night one, and you'll see that I've changed him and done him in a different way. Because the facings are orange, I assumed it would be reverse colours. He would have orange in the same helmet. But it actually looks like he had a blue coat and a busby, so like the Chasseur à Cheval would have worn. So different from the helmet, so I need to get that changed. But overall, I'm quite happy with these guys. I'm going to get at least one more box of these heavy cavalry, and this is a regiment that I'll definitely be finishing off. Now, one of the things with this unit, and the next one I'm going to talk about in a second, is because they use alternative heads, plastics are absolutely ideal for these. With the Spanish Cuirassiers, I intend to buy a French metal command and paint them up because they are just a different paint scheme. With these guys, alright, yeah, you can saw off metal heads and things like that, but it's a huge pain in the arse. With these guys, I'd recommend, for argument's sake, if you were saying, well, I don't know what I want to build, do I want to build the Spanish Cuirassiers or the Westphalian Cuirassiers with this box of plastic, I would go for the Westphalians because you've got all the parts you need in that one box. You don't need to buy any extras. A crazy business plan in my mind would be, it'd be great if someone could do STL files for a 3D printer for this, would be just different heads. But this is something I've talked about before. I think something like Bavarian heads would be absolutely brilliant because you could just buy a box of Austrians, glue the Bavarian heads on, jobs are good. Problem with that is, of course, that you'd have to market them cheap enough that you can buy the heads and the box of figures for less than just buying them in metal. So that's why I think 3D printers would be the way forward with that. Anyway, that's a humongous tangent there. So just to get back to the Westphalian Cuirassiers. Now, one other slight thing that I've not done here is the helmets actually had a turban around the front, very much like the Cuirassier helmets did. I've not modelled these on. You could paint it on if you wanted to. I haven't, but you could model it on. I tried on one figure and it was quite difficult because there was nowhere on the helmet for the green stuff to stick to. So top tip here would be either rough it up with some sandpaper or just like strike it with your knife, get a few nicks in it, and then try and put the turban on. I didn't bother. You can if you want to. Obviously, it's entirely up to you. Now, the Westphalian Cuirassiers do actually have rules for black powder. They're on page 88 of A Clash of Eagles, and they are regular cavalry with sabres, hand-to-hand 8, so pretty good. They're morale 4+, which is strange. Being Cuirassiers, I would have thought should be 3+. That might be a typo, but okay. They're stamina 3, reliable, heavy cavalry D3. So, apart from the -1 to their morale, they're just standard French Cuirassiers. And they actually performed quite well in the campaign, in the 1812 campaign. So, I think that sounds reasonable enough. Now, one unit that I haven't made out of this box is the Westphalian Garde du Corps. They look absolutely awesome. If you look on a picture I've got on the screen now, the officer, his cuirass is in the bottom right-hand corner, and it's white. Now, I've not seen that before. I don't know if it's just painted white, or if it's enamelled or whatever. I've never seen anything like that before. So I'll definitely be doing some of those guys in the future. But, yeah, no, I didn't manage to get around to doing them this time. They've even got the starburst in the middle. You get that on the sprue. So maybe that's going to be for a future project. The first Cuirassiers, they're much more of an Austrian-style uniform. But with the French helmets, I'm going to get a box of Austrian Cuirassiers, and we'll have a look at how to make them when I get that set. So the third and final regiments that I've made out of this box, because I've done a sprue per regiment, basically. These guys are quite different to the French uniform. So far, we've seen they've had the coat, the ruffs, the fluffy bits out of the cuirass, things like that. It's just a different helmet or a different colour scheme. Well, these guys are the Württemberg Garde du Corps. Now, you can see from this picture by Contel, they actually also have the sunburst in the middle of the breastplate. Now, I've not modelled that on. You can do, but it's difficult for the rank and file guys because they've got the strap that goes across their chest. So for my figures, I'm just saying that the strap is covering it over. On the officers, I've seen ones that are absolutely massive. They're the entire size of the cuirass. Now, that might just be a dress uniform thing, I'm not entirely sure. But it does seem a little excessive, I have to say. So these guys are the Wurttemberg Garde du Corps. And as you can see, they've got yellow jackets underneath their cuirasses. And they also make use of the carabinier-style helmet. Now, as with the last ones, I probably should have mentioned this. They are steel helmets with a brass comb. I did mention it. And these are as well. The officers, I've done steel and gold for their thing. Probably like a gold leaf rather than being actual solid gold, because that would be very heavy and very, very expensive. But yeah, so you can see though, these guys don't have the frills that stick out of the cuirass like the Cuirassiers do. So you're going to need to cut those off. Now, I used the arms from the Cuirassier set as well, the right arm, the sword arms. It might be better off if you've got some spares from a dragoon regiment, using the dragoon ones. Obviously not the elite dragoons, because they've got the epaulets on. And the Württemberg Garde du Corps, as you can see, didn't have the epaulets and they didn't have the frills that come out of the cuirass. So they're a little bit more difficult to make. But again, if you were to leave them on and just paint them yellow, I don't think anyone would hugely care, if I'm honest. For me, I cut them off, but I could just as easily have left them on. One thing that I've also changed, that I didn't necessarily need to, is the saddle cloths. Now, the French Cuirassiers, they come with like a squared off saddle cloth, as you've seen in the other two examples. These have got much more of a point one. So I cut the old ones off, just file them down, and then made new ones with green stuff. If you're not sure about how to do that, I've got a live stream video on the channel. Go and check that one out, where I make some Russian Hussars. I did the same thing for the Russian Hussars saddle cloths as well. So one of the downsides is that one of the guys, he no longer sits on the back of the horse because I've widened out the saddle, so he doesn't go all the way down. I could like file his legs down or file that bit off, but to be honest, it's not really that noticeable, so he's alright, he's not too bad. I should also really take off the cartridge boxes because they didn't have the carbines, but again, yeah, I've left them on because it just adds a bit to the model, and you can always use them as a pouch or something like that. Checking my copy of Clash of Eagles, there's no rules in there for the Wurttemberg Garde du Corps, and that's fine. I'm not sure they took part in the campaign of 1812. So looking at the general sort of stats for these things, I would go with the normal heavy cavalry D3, probably reliable. I'd give them 8 attacks in close combat, morale save of probably a 3+, and a stamina of 3 as well. Maybe even you could push to an elite 5+ perhaps. But yeah, that might be pushing it a little bit far. I'd say either reliable or the elite, probably not both. The reliable is probably a bit less powerful, so I would tend to go with that one. Now, I did say earlier on I would talk about a 4th regiment that I haven't made yet because the parts I'd need aren't around, and it's the Pskov Russian Cuirassier Regiment. I say it's Pskov, it's probably not. It's spelled Pskov. And they were a Cuirassier regiment that, similar to the Spanish, used captured French equipment. Now, that said, the reason why I say the parts aren't available yet is when I say they used captured French equipment, they used captured French cuirasses, but not their helmets. They kept their Russian leather helmets, and they are quite distinct from the French ones. Now, the Perrys have announced that they're going to bring out a Russian and Prussian heavy cavalry box. It's going to be the same box, with different heads in there. So my recommendation is going to be, if you have a friend who is a Prussian fan, then use the Russian heads that he's not using. Or, get them from a third-party seller. I don't really know anyone who sells, like, Napoleonic bits. But if there is one out there, then go large with them. You might also want to use the sword arm from there as well, because as you can see in the picture I've put up, There's no epaulets or cuirass frills on these guys either. I think these would probably be the most difficult to convert out of the French Cuirassiers, mainly because you've got to get rid of all the frills, you've got to find an additional helmet from somewhere, you've got to get rid of the epaulets, things like that. So I'm definitely going to do it. You'd also need to redo the saddlecloth as well. I'm definitely going to do it at some point. It's just a question of waiting for the Perrys to bring out their plastic Russian and Prussian heavy cavalry box, and then we've got the plastic heads that we need. I tried to cast my own using some silicon mold making and green stuff, but the results were not great. So if I'm honest, I thought I'll just wait for the plastic ones. So there you go. That's 4 different units that you can make out of the French Cuirassier and Carabinier box that aren't the French Cuirassiers and Carabiniers. Obviously, you can make them as well. And the idea really of this video and this ongoing series is going just to be to let people know that you can have a bit of variation in your armies. It doesn't necessarily have to be just French or just Prussians or just British or whatever, but you can use those figures to do something else with as well. So as an example, for my Ottomans, and there's going to be a full deep dive on the Ottomans in the near future, I'm going to use the Perry's Afghan infantry for those. For my 1812 American regulars, I'm going to use Waterloo British infantry. So just to let you know that there's a lot of different things out there. The Napoleonic Wars took place at the start of industrialization and standardization. So you've got things like French uniforms are a perfect example. You know, you get a box of French, you can make almost any German state out of them, not Bavarians, but almost any other one. You can make Italians, Napolis, Swiss. You can do all sorts with them. So it's just about letting people know that there is some variety out there. Just because the box says French Cuirassiers on the front, you can do a whole lot more with than that. So thank you very much for watching. Just to let you know that I am now affiliated with the Outpost, so there's a link down below for them. It's 20% off Warlord game stuff. I think it's 10% off the Perrys. I'm not entirely sure how much Perry stuff they've got in at the moment. And I think it's 10% off Victrix they do as well. Just to let you know, though, the waiting time from their suppliers can be quite a while. So if you're in a hurry for something, make sure it's in stock first. They do have live stock levels. And also, please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe to find out about our Wednesday night videos as well. They're much shorter form ones than these. I thought about doing this one over 3 or 4 of the Wednesday evening videos, but I thought, no, I'll just do them as one, just to stop the repetition going on. I know we don't really do a lot of hobbying and modelling stuff on the Sundays, so I might end up moving this to the Wednesday night slots. I don't know. Let me know if you want to keep the Sundays for the history and things like that, and do the Wednesdays for modelling, or if you don't mind a bit of the combination. Let me know in the comments down below. But all that said, thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you next time.